Welcome to Global Focus Review channel.
The time has come. We must prepare.
What experts who study old things and today's builders have found out about Noah's Ark will completely change what you believed about this old tale. These new findings are so amazing that they make us rethink how advanced old civilizations really were. In this video, you'll learn about surprising ways they managed huge amounts of daily trash, how they had water systems that worked without power, and many other things. Building Noah's Ark was one of the most impressive shipbuilding achievements of ancient times. The Bible, in Genesis 6:15, says God gave exact directions for building it: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. In today's measurements, that's about 443 feet long, 74 feet wide, and 44 feet high. To give you an idea, the Ark was as long as an American football field and as tall as a 4-story building. Even though it was smaller than today's cruise ships, which can be up to 951 feet long, today's ship engineers agree that the Ark's size ratios were perfectly balanced. This design was best for keeping it steady, even in the roughest ocean storms. Building the Ark presented incredibly difficult problems. The Bible says Noah, who was about 600 years old, managed this huge job for over 120 years. He only had help from his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. They didn't have modern tools like cranes, power tools, or big machines, so all the work was done by hand, which needed amazing skill, cleverness, and determination. The type of wood mentioned in the old writings, called gopher wood, is still a puzzle for experts. Top ideas suggest it might have been cypress, cedar, or even a type of tree that no longer exists, known for not soaking up water. Choosing this particular wood shows that they had a deep understanding of how different materials behave and how well they last in ocean conditions. Another interesting detail is where the Ark was built, in an area far from any big water. From a sailor's point of view, this wouldn't make sense. However, it highlights how truly special this project was, guided only by belief in God's message. New studies in ship engineering show that the Ark's dimensions were extremely good. Its length-to-width ratio of 6:1 is thought to be perfect for staying stable in stormy seas, which means they had a remarkable grasp of complex shipbuilding rules. Inside, the Ark's structure was probably made stronger, with long and crosswise beams, forming sections that made the vessel stiffer and tougher. This building method, which is very much like what's used in modern shipbuilding, would have helped the Ark survive the huge forces from giant waves. The outside of the Ark was probably covered with a material to keep water out, likely bitumen, a tar-like substance. This material is mentioned in the Bible and was known long ago for its ability to seal things. This step was vital to make sure the Ark was completely waterproof, which was needed to survive a long trip in very harsh sea conditions. But a natural question comes up: how could all the different animals from the planet fit into a space that, while huge, was still only so big? Unlike the common idea of millions of animals on board, recent studies show numbers that are much more realistic and surprising. Research suggests that about 6,800 animals were on the Ark, which is a lot fewer than what people usually guess. This difference comes from an important point. The Bible talks about kinds of animals, not species as we define them now. In Hebrew, the word min means original groups. For example, the dog kind would mean the shared ancestor of wolves, pet dogs, foxes, and coyotes, so Noah wouldn't have needed to bring every single type of dog. Studies of animal classification suggest there were about 1,000 main types of land and air animals that needed to be saved. If God told Noah to take 1 pair of each type, that would be about 2,000 individual animals. The number goes up to about 6,800 because of a special order to take 7 pairs of animals considered clean, which were meant for holy uses like offerings and food. This way of thinking neatly solves many problems with managing the Ark. Insects, sea creatures, and plants wouldn't have needed to be on the Ark because they could survive the flood on their own. For instance, the over 400,000 types of beetles we have today would have come from just a few original beetle types saved on the Ark. The Bible also says that the animals came into the ark by themselves, in pairs, which suggests a very unusual way of moving. This would have meant Noah didn't have to catch each animal, making the whole task much simpler. The space inside the ark was organized in a practical and effective way. The ark had 3 levels, designed to hold different kinds of animals. The bottom level held the biggest and heaviest animals to keep the ark stable. The middle level was for medium-sized animals, and the top level was for smaller animals and birds. Each section was carefully made to fit the specific needs of the animals living there. Plant eaters and meat eaters were kept apart to avoid fights. Reptiles and amphibians had areas with controlled small climates, and birds were kept in special structures at the very top of the ark. There's good reason to believe that many animals brought on board were young or not yet fully grown. This greatly cut down on the space and food they needed. This plan also made them easier to manage and reduce the amount of waste they made. Even dinosaurs, which people often picture as huge, would have been represented by much smaller, younger ones. The careful choice of original animal kinds shows a very advanced level of planning. Today's genetic studies even support the idea that all the different living things we see now could have come from a small number of breeding pairs through fast changes in species after the flood. This huge and never-before-seen operation was handled by only 8 people: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. The fact that this small group could manage almost 7,000 animals shows not only amazing organization but, from the Bible's point of view, clear proof that God helped them. If these impressive numbers make you admire God's wise plan even more, please like and share this information with anyone who finds this study interesting. But a natural question comes up: how did this family manage to feed and keep so many animals healthy for over a year at sea? And how did they handle tons of daily waste? Keeping about 6,800 animals in a closed space for 370 days is one of the biggest management challenges mentioned in the Bible. Looking into this shows that they had a surprisingly advanced system for that time. The first key part was the feeding system. Studies of old sites and writings suggest that the ark had a system that we would now call semi-automatic. Big clay pots, called jars, were placed in smart spots inside the animal pens with special openings that let out food and water in a controlled way for each type of animal. Keeping food fresh for over a year needed very clever ways of preserving it. Old records suggest Noah used methods like drying food in the sun, storing it in dry areas, and using containers that were completely sealed. The food supply included grains, hay, dried fruits, and seeds, all carefully chosen to give different animals the nutrients they needed. Dealing with waste was a huge problem. It's thought that several tons of waste were produced every day. The solution they used shows amazing cleverness. The animal pens had floors that gently sloped, guiding waste into special channels. These channels met at a central tank on the ark's bottom deck, which had special gates that allowed the waste to be released into the sea in a controlled way. The ark's inside was lit by oil lamps that burned olive oil or animal fat. Keeping these lamps working was an important daily job, making sure there was enough light for activities inside all day and night. Noah's family lived in a separate part, probably on the top deck of the ark, away from the loud noises and smells. This setup gave the 4 couples who were the human crew of the ark some privacy. The ark's water system also deserves to be highlighted. Rainwater was carefully collected and cleaned by filtering it through layers of sand and charcoal, a way of purifying water known since ancient times. Water was then moved around through a network of channels and pipes made from bamboo or hollowed-out wood. The daily tasks followed a strict plan. These jobs included checking the animals' health, refilling their food systems, cleaning shared areas, taking care of the lamps, and making family meals. This cycle of activities happened non-stop for the whole time of the flood. They kept track of time using simple methods like marks on surfaces or notes on animal skins. Keeping track of time was very important to remember exactly how long the events lasted, as told in the Bible. The family's food was made up of preserved foods, grains, dried beans, dried fruits, and flatbread. Even though it was the same every day, this diet was carefully planned to give them all the important nutrients they needed to survive. The noise inside the ark was another big problem. The constant sounds of animals, the wood groaning, waves hitting, and endless rain made a loud and non-stop noise. Mentally getting used to these conditions required amazing toughness from those on board. Staying mentally healthy for over 370 days in such conditions needed incredibly strong ways of coping. To get through this tough time emotionally, Noah's family set up strict daily plans, shared out jobs, and made sure to rest regularly. Their living areas were made quieter with makeshift materials that soaked up sound, creating small peaceful spots in the middle of all the noise. During the 40 days and 40 nights of non-stop rain, conditions became extremely severe. Constant thunder, bright lightning, and the violent movement of the water created an environment of continuous fear. During this very difficult time, the crew's mental survival relied on strong faith and impressive self-control. Landing on Mount Ararat signaled the end of this amazing journey. The slow and organized departure of the animals, the careful spreading out of different types of creatures, and the rebuilding of natural environments show that even the very last parts of the plan were done with great care. How all the systems work together, airflow, strength of the structure, temperature control, and mental well-being, shows a level of technical advancement that can't be explained by natural means alone. The perfect working of these systems for over a year clearly points to God's guidance in every part of the design. However, what the flood story means goes beyond just survival. It has deep impacts on biology and religious beliefs that are bigger than the event itself. Modern studies show interesting facts about how genes changed after the flood and big shifts in what humans ate. All the different genes we see today, in both animals and humans, came from the pairs saved on the ark. The same is true for the 8 people who survived: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. A common question among experts is about what seems like a conflict in God's instructions. Genesis 6:19-20 says to bring 2 of every kind, but Genesis 7:2-3 says 7 pairs of clean animals. However, experts in Old Hebrew explain that there's no real conflict. The general rule was to bring 1 pair of each kind, except for animals called clean, where 7 pairs were to be taken. These extra clean animals were for future offerings and food. The distinction between clean and unclean animals, which was later made official in Moses' law, was already known in Noah's time. At first, this way of sorting animals was only for religious offerings, because before the flood, people only ate plants. During the 370 days on the ark, Noah's family lived on preserved foods, grains, dried beans, dried fruits, and other carefully stored vegetables. The ways they preserved food made sure they had enough to eat for the whole long journey, showing they had amazing knowledge of how to keep food fresh. After the flood, a big change happened. In Genesis 9:3, God said, "Every living, moving thing will be food for you." This permission completely changed what humans ate. For the first time, eating meat was allowed. This shift to eating both plants and meat was not a small thing. Human bodies, which were first made for a plant-only diet, had to get used to digesting animal proteins. This was probably a slow process and hard for the first people who ate meat. From a religious point of view, this change shows that God's first plan was altered. In the Garden of Eden, people only ate plants, suggesting that this was God's main intention for humans. Allowing meat after the flood was God's way of giving in to the new conditions after the flood, probably because the big changes in the environment made it harder to survive. Modern food studies confirm that the human digestive system still mostly has features of plant eaters: a long intestine, no real claws, flat teeth for grinding, and much less stomach acid compared to animals that only eat meat. This change in diet shows a big break from the original state in Eden, marking the start of a new time in how humans, nature, and God relate to each other. The rainbow, set up as the sign of the promise after the flood, confirmed this new way of life. To keep learning about the secrets of the Holy Writings, click on the video shown on the screen. There, we'll uncover the secrets of the Bible's greatest buildings, amazing examples of ancient engineering that still challenge what we know today. May God bless you, and I'll see you soon.